Hello everyone. Today's poem is Yong Wind, a Yong Wind from the Book of Songs. We had another poem with the same title, Bei in Bei Wind. So basically, we know that the title, Bei a boat made of Cypress Wood, resembles the fate of a state lord, because the sound in Chinese Bei share the same sound as the lord Bo in the ancient time, not today. So basically, it means a boat of the state lord. So from the title, we know this poem is about the state lord. Well, in the ancient stories, this poem is not about a state lord. It's about a widow of the passed away state lord. And this poem was by that widow, and he swear that she would not get married the second time per the request of his parents. A second marriage for a woman is maybe a little bit weird, but it happened from time to time in that period in the history, because we see many cases in the history book 春秋左传, because the marriage of a state lord and his wife is between two states. The girl is from another state. That's because of that's per the code of conduct. Yeah. And the focal point is about the politics. It's not about the small single family, because the family of the state lord resembles the whole state, just like the king, right? So even the political structure, the government, is not a kingdom in some European countries, but they still have the king. And in some way, the family, the life of the king, of the queen, reflected the status quo of the whole state, of the whole citizens in that state. So this is a quite big things in those times in ancient China as well. We are not 100% sure that this poem was by that widow, but through the history, everybody think from the content, from the context of this poem, the emotions, the feelings from this poem is quite complex to that story, and it's very likely from a hand of a woman, because if you are a lord, of course you worry a lot about yourself, but your most worries is about the state, the citizens, and we can see quite a lot that type of poems in the Book of Songs, in the ancient history books. So in this poem, the focal point is that the poet, or the widow, she was so sad, she was so furious, and the only thing he shouted is, "I won't buy it." By what? By the order or from her parents. Her parents want she could get a second marriage. Thus, her parents' state would have a new alliance, right? So in the troubled time of these days, as a single person, as a country, how important you have several trustful alliance. That's the same thing in the time of Book of Songs. Okay, let's go through this poem. So I also have some arguments on the interpretations by myself. Okay, the first sentence, 泛彼柏舟，在彼中河. So we are drifting with the boat of Cypress Wood in the middle of the Yellow River. So be careful. The river, the character 河 in Book of Songs was always referring to the Yellow River. So it's quite vividly simulate the state or the state lord, his fate as drifting, sailing a boat in a big, wide, and dangerous river. So my argument here is that this may be a description of the funeral of the passed away state lord. So they should convey the big coffin of that passed away state lord across the river to their cemetery. The second sentence, 髧彼两毛，实维我仪. So my hair slipped and dropped down from both sides. 两毛, the two sleeves of hairs. 实维我仪, so that is my real face. 仪 normally refers to the outlook or the appearance of a person. Here, it mainly refers to the hair dropped down and reflected a sad widow, right? But my argument here is that the character yi refers to the outlook or the dressing code in the later generations, but the very original meaning of this character refers to sacrifice, to a ceremony to the god, to the ancestors. So the two hairs basically refers to the sacrifice, maybe a cow, maybe a sheep. So here it refers, I dropped down to sacrifice here, and that was my offering to this ceremony. What ceremony? A funeral, right? Okay, the next sentence. 之死矢靡它. I would go to the death, and I swear I won't change it. So the 之死 means I would go to death or until death, until my death. 之 means to go for. 誓 is a long word. It means swear or oath. So here the poet, the widow, made her oath that this oath, until my death, I won't change it. 靡它 normally explained as I won't have a second oath. But here, 它 in the ancient time refers to the snake. So 弥它 in my own argument, it means won't change, because the snake is always walking, crawling in a zigzag way. So it's always changing its directions. 弥它 means I won't change my directions. So which means I won't change my target. I won't change my oath. Okay, the last pair of sentences in the first paragraph. 母也天之，不谅人之。母 mother, 天 the heaven. So it's an alternative to the father. So from the story, we know her parents asked or insist the widow to have a second marriage. So here, the oath is to her parents, her mother, her father, as well as to the God or to her passed away husband. So the last pair of sentences, if we know this background, the last pair of sentences is quite simple. 母也天之, my mother, my father, I swear. 之 is a simplified words as 祝. 祝 means to swear. So in this, if you are a believer, it's quite simple that if we want to achieve something, we always express, we always ask to the God. So this is a sort of a bless, right? So the widow make her bless in front of her parents, in front of her passed away husband, the coffin, right? So that he treat her parents and husband just like the God. So she made her oath, right? 不谅人之，谅 normally was explained as trust. So he said, so the last two pair of sentences, we should take them as a whole piece of sentence. So he said, I made my oath. What oath? The oath doesn't written in this poem, but from the context we know she doesn't want get a second marriage. She want to stick with her dead husband, right? So the last two pair of sentences, 之死矢靡它，母也天之，不谅人之, it actually is like a shouting out in front of her parents. My mother, my father, I made my oath. Never don't trust my oath. Until my death, I won't change my oath. So this is the last two pair of sentences. 之死矢靡它，母也天之，不谅人之. With the full understanding of the first paragraph, the second paragraph is quite simple. The first sentence, 泛彼柏舟，在彼河侧. We are sailing, we are drifting on the boat of Cypress Wood, and now we reached to the other side of the Yellow River, 河侧, another side. 髧彼两毛，实为我特. So I dropped down those two hairy sacrifices. That was my offering to this grand ceremony, to this funeral. So 特 is quite obvious. It refers to a big bull. That's the highest level of sacrifice. The sacrifice was in some different levels. The bull is the highest level, and a pig, a sheep, is a lower level sacrifice. 之死矢靡慝，母也天之，不谅人之。Until my death, my oath, my swear won't change. So that's the normal explanation, but here I would rather think 特 should be read as 逆, and it also should be explained to cover up. So with my argument, 之死矢靡慝 should be explained as until my death, my oath, my swear won't be covered up. I will tell everybody to know my oath, not only my parents, not only my passed away husband, not only the gods. I will tell everybody. 逆 means to cover up, to hide oath, a secret, as a secret. And my mother, my father, I have made my oath, I have blessed, and you just don't trust, you just don't believe my oath, my blessing. So here it reflects two things. The widow made his oath public, and still her parents insist her to marry again. So this is really a sad story, right? The two same title poem by Zhou is a very good example. You can compare them two. So normally we believe the poem in Bei Wind was written by a state lord. So the context, the feelings is quite different from the poem in Yong Wind, because we believe this wind we have today was written by a female. Even they are both so-called as 君子, the lord. So in the Chinese, the state lord was normally was so-called as 君子, and his wife was so-called as 小君, the junior lord. But basically, they share the same level in the social hierarchy. But anyhow, they have a different focus. The state lord take care of everything in the state lord, and thus was reflected in the Bei Wind. And in this poem, nothing but the marriage was reflected, or her personal privilege, her personal fate was reflected in this poem. So that was the difference between a state lord and her wife, the 小君. The focal point of the wife of a state lord was mainly 应导 in her palace, housekeeping, to bring up kids and to take care of the sacrifice in the ancestors' temple. So that's already, it's a lot of work. Just imagine that's a big family, a family of hundreds of people, of thousands of people. So that's still a big amount of works for that wife. But her eyesight was normally quite limited because her scope was only indoor in her palace. Okay, that's for today. Bye bye.